The world often looks with bewilderment upon those who choose retreat, the keen minds who prefer the tranquility of solitude over the social tumult. This inclination is seldom understood, yet behind this choice lies a profound truth. For the intelligent individual, solitude is not an escape, but a cherished destination, a space where their soul finds the echo necessary for its own frequency. What if this need for silence, far from being isolation, was actually the hallmark of a consciousness seeking a broader alignment, a connection to a different source of wisdom? Together we will explore these inner territories, guided by the wisdom of figures like Carl Gustav Jung, who magnificently mapped the landscapes of our psyche. Jung taught us that our vital energy, our libido, is not oriented in the same way for everyone. He distinguished the introvert, who draws strength and regeneration from their inner world, from the extrovert, who thrives on interaction with the external world. Understanding this fundamental distinction is the first step in deciphering why solitude can be not just a choice, but a vital necessity for certain particularly sharp minds. This isn't a mere preference, but a genuine architecture of being, a specific way of processing the world's energy and recharging one's own. Do you recognize this sensation? This inner radar that seems to pick up every micro-expression, every vocal inflection, every unspoken word vibrating in the air during a simple conversation. This hypervigilance of the senses and intuition, far from being an anomaly, is often the experience of souls who perceive the world with particular acuity. You may have often sensed the atmosphere even before a word was spoken, absorbing surrounding emotional states like a sponge until you reach saturation. This overflow, this pervasive anxiety that can sometimes overwhelm you in a crowd or after intense social interactions, is not a weakness. It's a sign of great sensitivity, an ability to feel the subtle field of energies that surround us. You might feel exhausted after social events that seem to invigorate others, desperately craving a quiet space to recenter yourself, to offload what's overflowing. This emotional fatigue is not a social failing, but a natural consequence of your way of perceiving and processing information. Information that goes far beyond the words exchanged. It's a sensory solitude at times, a need to withdraw from overstimulation to preserve your inner clarity, your vital energy. Perhaps you even believed for a long time that something was wrong with you, that you were too complicated, too sensitive, too out of sync. What if this perception was about to shift? What if what seemed like a burden, a source of isolation, was actually a gateway to a deeper understanding of yourself and the world? This tendency towards solitude, far from being mere imposed isolation, can reveal itself as a sacred space, a laboratory where your soul distills its most precious intuitions. This need for withdrawal is not an escape, but a movement towards your center, towards that place within you where your inner sovereignty resides. Where you once perceived weakness, an inability to conform, perhaps lies the signature of your uniqueness, an invitation to honor your own frequency. What society may have led you to interpret as a flaw, this introspection, this reserve, this need for depth, could well be your greatest asset, the very source of your light and wisdom. Imagine for a moment that this heightened sensitivity, this ability to pick up on subtle signals, is a form of inner guidance, a subtle navigation system leading you towards what truly nourishes you and away from what drains you. Historically, solitude has often been shrouded in negative connotations, perceived as social failure or sadness. Yet paradoxically, many of the most influential intellectual figures in our history cherished it, viewing it not as a void, but as a privilege, a fertile ground for the mind. Think of Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher who asserted that solitude is the fate of all great minds. For him, isolating oneself was less about fleeing others than about finding oneself, an essential condition for original and profound thought. Albert Einstein, whose discoveries reshaped our understanding of the universe, deeply appreciated retreat and silence. He said, "Quiet and a modest life bring more happiness than the pursuit of success, combined with constant restlessness." This silence wasn't empty. It was full of potential, the space where his creativity could flourish, where the universe's whispers became audible. Nikola Tesla, that genius inventor whose flashes of intuition illuminated the modern world, consciously distanced himself from social relationships to preserve what he called his intellectual productivity. He understood that his creative energy, his ability to visualize and innovate, required a concentration that social tumult could only hinder. These giants of thought weren't fleeing the world out of misanthropy, but were seeking to protect the flame of their inner world, the sanctuary of their genius. Solitude carries within it this fascinating ambivalence. It can be a powerful tool for creation, but also a barrier that can hinder personal growth, if not understood and tamed. Why is it a creative tool? Because it is in the silence of the social ego, far from external solicitations and expectations, that the mind can delve into the depths of the unconscious. This is where new ideas emerge, unexpected connections are formed, and true originality can blossom. Solitude allows for what Jung called the dialogue with the unconscious, an inexhaustible source of inspiration and wisdom. It offers the necessary distance to observe, analyze, and synthesize information in a way that is often impossible in the constant flow of interactions. But it can also become a barrier if it turns into imposed isolation, a prison where one cuts oneself off, not only from others, but also from the richness of human experience. Excessive solitude can lead to sterile rumination, a loss of contact with reality, and sometimes a feeling of alienation. Carl Jung's distinction between introversion and extroversion is crucial here. The introvert, let's remember, recharges their energy batteries in solitude, while the extrovert recharges them through contact with others. Our contemporary society, with its cult of visible performance, instant communication, and extensive social networking, tends to overwhelmingly value extroverted behaviors. Team building, open-plan offices, and active demonstrative participation are often presented as the keys to success and fulfillment. This societal pressure can be particularly trying for naturally introverted individuals who may feel inadequate, even guilty, for their need for withdrawal. They are often given the impression that they are too serious, not enough fun, or antisocial, when they are merely honoring their natural way of functioning. This implicit judgment can generate real suffering, a feeling of not belonging. Added to this is the disconnect often induced by a keen intelligence. When your mind operates at a different speed, when your interests are deep and sometimes niche, common social conversations can quickly seem superficial, even frustrating. You yearn for authentic exchanges, stimulating debates of ideas, a soul-to-soul connection, and you often find yourself facing conventional exchanges, small talk that barely scratches the surface. This isn't arrogance, but a real need for substance, a quest for intellectual and emotional resonance. Cognitive dissonance then arises from this gap between your thought processes, your existential questions, and accepted social norms, the dominant topics of conversation. For example, you might be pondering the ethical implications of a scientific discovery, the nature of consciousness, or the synchronicity of events in your life, while the surrounding discussion revolves around more mundane topics or fleeting entertainment. This disconnect isn't a value judgment on these topics, but the observation of a difference in frequency, a difficulty in finding people with whom to share the depth of your reflections. You might then feel like a stranger in your own world, speaking a language few understand, which naturally fuels the desire to retreat into spaces where you can explore your thoughts without feeling obliged to simplify or silence them. The daily difficulties are numerous. The feeling of being constantly out of sync, mental exhaustion after trying to play the game socially. Difficulty finding relationships that truly nourish your deep self, or the tendency to overanalyze interactions seeking meaning where there may not always be any. This experience is often amplified by heightened sensitivity to environmental stimuli. The noise of a busy office, the commotion of a crowd, the multiplicity of simultaneous conversations in a public place can quickly become overwhelming, even physically painful. for someone whose nervous system is more finely wired. This isn't a mere annoyance, but a genuine sensory saturation that depletes cognitive and emotional resources, creating an urgent need to withdraw to a calm, controlled environment to regenerate. This hypersensitivity, often associated with intuitive and creative minds, intensifies the experience of social interactions. Every nuance is perceived, every energy is felt, which can make exchanges both rich and extremely costly in terms of energy. You feel things with an intensity that others don't suspect, and this includes joy as well as pain, enthusiasm as well as anguish. Added to this is the pressure of modern hyperconnectivity. We live in a world that values almost constant exposure and communication. The incessant notifications, the injunction to always be available, to react instantly, can be particularly oppressive for profiles that need long stretches of time, of disconnection, to think, create, and simply be. This culture of immediacy and overstimulation often directly contradicts the natural rhythm of more contemplative souls. It is therefore crucial to distinguish deliberately chosen solitude from imposed isolation. The first is a space of freedom, a haven of peace where one recharges, cultivates one's inner garden, and connects with one's inner guidance. It's a conscious choice, an affirmation of one's sovereignty. Imposed isolation, on the other hand, often reflects suffering, difficulty adapting, a feeling of rejection or misunderstanding. It is tinged with sadness, with lack, and can have negative consequences on psychological well-being. Chosen solitude can, moreover, wonderfully foster Jung's cherished individuation process. Individuation is that journey towards the full realization of oneself, the awareness and affirmation of one's unique identity, distinct from the collective. It is by withdrawing at times from the noise of the world that one can hear the whisper of one's soul, that one can filter out external influences to discover who one truly is, beyond social masks and parental or cultural expectations. It's an act of courage, that of stripping oneself bare to meet one's essence. Modern spirituality speaks here of alignment, of connection to one's inner truth, to that unique vibrational frequency that is ours. To align oneself is to tune one's inner instrument so that it plays the music of one's soul, and this often requires moments of silence and introspection. Stoic philosophy can also offer us valuable insight. Thinkers like Seneca or Marcus Aurelius, while valuing community and civic duty, also emphasize the importance of the inner citadel.
For the Stoics, the wise person is one who can maintain their inner peace, their ataraxia, regardless of external circumstances. Chosen solitude can be training for this inner fortress, a time to cultivate reason, virtue, and detachment from things beyond our control, like the judgment of others or the chaos of the world. Seneca wrote in his Letters to Lucilius about the benefits of withdrawal for study and contemplation, not to flee society, but to return to it better, wiser, and stronger.
It's about finding a balance between serving others and caring for one's soul. This stoic detachment is not indifference, but profound self-mastery, an emotional sovereignty that prevents one from being swept away by the tide of collective passions or interpersonal dramas. Finding a balance is therefore essential. It's not about advocating total hermetism, but about recognizing and respecting one's need for solitude while maintaining meaningful and nourishing social ties. The risks of prolonged unmastered isolation are real. It can lead to a disconnection from reality, a mental rigidity where our own thoughts loop endlessly without being confronted by other perspectives. A subtle danger is also the development of an illusory sense of superiority, where one ends up believing oneself above the fray, despising those who do not share our depth of vision. It's a form of protection that becomes a gilded cage, a reflection of the spiritual or intellectual ego. The soul, to flourish, needs both rooting in solitude and blossoming in relationships. So, how do you navigate this sometimes complex ocean of isolation, whether chosen or induced? A few pointers can help you transform this tendency into a real strength. First, Accept that not all social interactions are meant to be deep or existential. Sometimes, a light exchange, simple courtesy, can be a way to maintain a tenuous but necessary link with the social fabric, without investing all your energy. Learn to dose your involvement. Next, actively seek out environments and people who vibrate on a similar frequency to yours, places where stimulating intellectual exchanges and authentic connections are possible. These could be book clubs, philosophy circles, online communities dedicated to your passions, or carefully chosen friendships. It's not about quantity, but quality. Cultivate active listening and genuine curiosity towards others, even when the topics discussed seem distant from your concerns. Everyone carries a universe within them, and opening up to others without judgment can sometimes reveal unsuspected gems and create unexpected bridges. It's also an exercise in stepping outside your own thought bubble. Sometimes, projecting our own complexity onto others prevents us from seeing their simplicity or their own hidden richness. Recognize the signs your body and soul send you. If you feel saturated, exhausted, if your inner radar is flashing red, honor your need for withdrawal without guilt. It's an act of self-compassion and respect for your own energy limits. It's not being weak. It's being attuned. In modern spirituality, we talk about following your inner guidance, those subtle feelings that indicate what is aligned for you. Your intuition is a precious compass. True intelligence, ultimately, may not lie solely in the ability to think complexly or accumulate knowledge. It also encompasses the wisdom to navigate with ease and awareness between these necessary periods of introspection, where one connects to the source of one's being, and an active, chosen, and joyful connection with the surrounding world and with others. It's the ability to be both a solitary lighthouse and a star in a constellation. It's understanding that our personal radiance, nurtured in silence and self-presence, can then illuminate our interactions and enrich the world.
The challenge is not to choose between solitude and society, but to integrate both, to dance with these two polarities of human experience. In conclusion, this inclination towards solitude, far from being an anomaly to be corrected, can be the sign of a soul seeking depth, authenticity, and alignment. When consciously managed, understood, and balanced, solitude transforms from a potential burden into a major asset for your intellectual, emotional, and spiritual development.
It becomes that sacred space where you can meet yourself, recharge, and hear the whispers of your own wisdom. The real challenge and true mastery lies in your ability to find that right balance, that harmonious dance between the vital need for introspection and the importance of authentic human connection. This is how solitude becomes a strength, an ally on your path of personal growth, allowing you to radiate your unique light with greater clarity and power. Don't be afraid of these moments of withdrawal, for it is often in silence that the soul's most beautiful melodies are composed. If these words resonate with you, if you recognize yourself in this journey between the need for solitude and the quest for meaning, comment below. I am finding my balance and radiating my frequency. To affirm your intention to consciously navigate these waters. Subscribe so you don't miss our next explorations into the mysteries of the soul and the keys to fulfillment. Share this insight with those who, like you, might feel misunderstood in their need for interiority. Remember, your unique way of feeling and thinking about the world is a gift. Honor it, cultivate it, and let it enlighten you. Your inner silence is a source, not a void.